Hey everyone, it is Monday. That means we are back again for another show. And tonight is the finale of a four-part series, Make It Make Sense. We're talking about gender, the gender war, and all the gender roles and things that have to go along with it. Now, if you guys are a part of my Instagram family, you will know that I kicked up a lot of dust this past week when I did a post talking to the women who have declared that they will not settle. They will not get with a man who makes less than them. They have worked hard to create careers and they want a man who makes more, much, much more than them. And so I proposed some options and some didn't go over too well. You guys know the drill. Comment your city and state so I can shout you out. And those of you on Instagram, please feel free to join me on YouTube. It is super, super helpful. We have people who are going to be joining us on camera, and I'm excited for that. I want to hear directly from the ladies. I'm going to let the guys chime in as well, but I want to hear back from the ladies because a lot of times we might say certain things, but we don't understand the context. We might have follow-up questions. Well, why do you think this way? What about this scenario? So I think it's really important to not just, make a simple comment on a platform like Instagram. You should be able to get your thoughts out there and really break it down. So we've got New York in the house. Oh, we got Canada. Very nice, very nice. And remember, if you are on my email list, you can come in and join the conversation because the link is already in your inbox. All right, guys. So I am going to go ahead and let everyone in. So if you're in the waiting room and you're also watching on YouTube, you are coming on camera in just a second. All right. All right, so we should have, there we go. All right, so let me adjust. Okay, can you hear all right? Let me know if you can hear okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Hello, Mr. Simmons.
What's going on, lady?
I'm doing so well, thank you. So I'm just going to adjust the screen because I am not using anything high tech. I got everything manually. So guys, give me just a second. Feel free to let everyone know where you are watching from if you would like to. And probably helps. I don't know why my screen. Oh, that's right. I was like, why is it only showing two? Because everyone else is off camera. I forgot, guys. I'm trying something new this time. So it's just going to be showing Terry right now on the screen because he's the only one with his camera on. Oops, we got someone else coming in. So Terry, you, by the way, I think it's your first time on my YouTube show. Am I not mistaken? I'm not mistaken. Okay. Welcome. Y'all, I have begged, I have threatened, I have pleaded and asked this man to come on. So I am really excited. I'm really geeked out. This is the person who probably had the most profound effect on my career. He saw something in me that I did not see at all years ago and really inspired me to start this journey in the way that it is now. So big hello to you, sir. You were talking about the statistics, and I thought it might be interesting because so far we do not have any of the ladies joining us. I'm sorry, guys. I never switched my screen over. We don't have any of the ladies yet. A lot of ladies had a lot of strong opinions. Oh, you're still muted, love. They had a lot of strong opinions, and I was really looking forward to hearing what the ladies had to say. But so far, it's all guys. You guys can't see on the screen. We have 4 gentlemen who have joined us. I'm just adjusting this one more time. Okay. And by the way, everyone who's watching, who is joining on Zoom, feel free to change the name. Oh, we got a woman. Feel free to change the name on your account so that you can promote whatever you want. Not whatever you want, but your Instagram handle. So you can put your at. I was like, wait, I'm we selling shoes or anything. But this is going to be a very interesting discussion. So like I said, we have one lady who has joined in very boldly. I love this. And oh, it's Ida. She's back. Hey, love.
Hi there.
Hi. All right. So no pressure, but you're holding it down for all of womankind right now. Just kidding. Just share your opinion, but you're the only woman right now. And so the first couple of questions that I'm going to be asking are directed specifically at the women. So don't feel pressure. But I'm going to be asking you since you're on camera, and then those who are in the audience who want to answer from the audience. And ladies, don't be scared. You can come and be off camera as well. Like I said, the people who are showing are the ones who are on camera, but I have 5 people who are off camera. And I keep forgetting to adjust my little thing. Sorry, guys. When someone comes in, it changes the little, so pardon me. All right, so we're going to get into it. I'm going to ask you, did you focus on your career? Because I only know because I saw another video that you were married at one point. But did you start out focusing on a career, or was your priority looking for love? Where were you initially? Let's just say straight out of high school, so after 18.
Me?
Mm-hmm. Don't put you on the spot.
Well, I was a teen mom, so I was focusing on children and working.
Okay.
School. So
the choice was made for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't focusing on marriage. And I was reuniting my relationship with the father. So I wasn't focusing on marriage. I was kind of found, if you will.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be found. I wasn't like paying attention to Reggie or anything like that. I was focusing on my children and things like that. So.
Got you. Okay. Well, you are lucky. There is another woman who is joining. So we are going to get everybody in the house and see. By the way, those of you who are newly joining the show, please comment your city and state so I can shout you out. It's just taking a second for everyone to come in and get settled. So come on in, share where you're watching from, and then we'll get this thing going. I want to ask, I'm sorry to make you guys wait, those of you who are on time, but sorry to make you wait, but we got to ask the ladies. Hey, Mike, nice to have you back with us, sir. All right, so those of you in the comments, I'm going to just pose the first question to the women in the comments. We had a lot of people say they're going to join, so hopefully they do it in a few minutes because that's the purpose of having this conversation. If you had the choice in your 20s to focus on marriage, getting married, and figuring out exactly what it is that a man is looking for, or establishing your career, and I purposely made an either or, in the comments and on camera, which would you prefer to focus on? What was the priority? And Ida was explaining her situation, which is a little different. Shout out to Pomona, California. Very nice. And if we don't have any women, I'll just cut to the discussion portion of it, because the first part was just going to be letting women speak, because I was telling them if they want to come on, they can come on, they can speak their case. But if no one comes on to speak their case, then we'll just jump to the discussion portion. The men are very, very happy to discuss the portion, so we can do that. We have one person said love and marriage. Another one said establishing career. Okay, perfect. And marriage and what a man would look like from marriage, but also self-development. Okay, I'm in my 20s, and I think it's more important for me to focus on understanding love and marriage. Very nice, Jazz. Okay. So I'm going to see who else is in the audience. I can't tell gender, but all the women, please make sure you answer that question so that we can see. Welcome back, Mr. Childs. Good to have you. Good to have you. And then Shantae, can you hear okay?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, perfect. So
I'm just driving, so that's why I didn't have my camera on.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So what did you pick in your 20s and in your 20s? Did you focus on career or family?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I got married at 21. So I will say that I think that I definitely should have focused more on my career and figuring out who I was. Because at 21 years old, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really know who I was or what I really wanted. So, yeah. And, needless to say, I'm not married anymore.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I'm not. So well, I definitely should have, I definitely should have secured my career first. Definitely.
I am right there with you when it comes to knowing myself and not taking the time to know myself. I'm going to actually open up this discussion because, like I said, we are heavy on the guys, not so much on the women. So that way the ladies don't have to carry the show. And I'm going to get into some of my opinions then. We're going to kind of revert to the end of the show first. I think a lot of women have found themselves in a dilemma because they were giving their reasons on the post, especially saying why they chose to go into their career. And some women were really open and candid, and they said they grew up having grandmothers who had marriages that, lasted for a lifetime, but the grandmothers confided in them that they were miserable. And the only reason they stayed was because they didn't have a choice. They felt like they didn't have a choice. So then that affected their mom's generation. The mom passed that information on to the daughters. And one woman even went so far as to say marriage and family wasn't even talked about. Like, it didn't even occur to her. It was always education, getting a career, education, getting a career. So the pendulum swung from absolutely needing to get married. That was like the pinnacle of life just, 20, 50 years ago, to some people not even thinking about it until they get into their 40s or 50s. And so for me, I am on the end where I'm seeing the women who are regretting being single. And when I get asked the question, well, you act like marriage is the pinnacle for everything. Why should a woman have to be married? And I have to remind ladies and say, nobody is going around forcing marriage on every woman. This is in response to the woman who says, I want to be married and I regret. So what do you think about that dilemma? First of all, we'll just start there because there's a lot of specific things that I want to unpack, but I'm going to invite the guys to join in now. And it's going to just be whoever wants to jump in, unless you guys want to use the little hand emoji if there get to be too many people. But what do you guys think about the women who, or I should say, do you feel for the women? I'll put it specifically that way. Do you feel for the women who spent 20, 30 years on a career and now are going, oh man, I wish I invested energy in a relationship? What are you guys' candid thoughts on that? Do you understand? Do you empathize?
Yeah, see, I think my first question would be, why does it have to be an either or?
That's a great question, and I have it listed.
I was thinking that too.
Okay, so before we jump into that, because that's a big one, what do you, does anyone else have an opinion on that dilemma where they are in their career and wishing that they had spent more time on relationships?
I mean, I totally get what you just laid out, like from a historical standpoint. I mean, I think most of your audience is African American, so I'll kind of speak from that perspective. But we got to think about the climate of the world, when our grandparents were in their early 20s. So not only were Black people oppressed as a race, it was compounded because women of all races were still second-class citizens to an extent. When we look at the historical timeline of when women first got the right to vote, and then obviously African-American women, it took longer. It really wasn't until after World War II that women even infused into the workplace, and that was due to necessity because the men were all fighting, so somebody had to work in the factory. And then we started seeing a trend of women, transitioning to the workplace, but we still largely judged women based on their ability to be homemakers. Mm-hmm. Were their kids being raised properly? Were their homes run efficiently? Were their husbands taken care of from a domestic standpoint? And I think we understand where we are now as a society. And let me say this, I'm definitely not here to champion a male cause or a male perspective. I'm a huge advocate for women. Most of my clients in the small business side are African-American women. And even some of the corporate stuff that we do around diversity, it focuses on women and leveling the playing field. So, I'm just here to share a perspective. I'm not here to defend the position, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I just think, given that historical timeline that you laid out, to me, the answer, in the big picture, is obvious. So you think about, the black male-female counterpart and what we were going through together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And granted, look, did black men have some, the word toxic is overutilized at this point, but we understand that the way masculinity was defined in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even up to now, it wasn't always the healthiest thing. And there were certain things that men did to women collectively, that wasn't talked about. We understand, in some cases, men had families on the other side of town. We understand that, grandma might not have worked. She was dependent on, her husband financially. Sometimes that came with abuse. Sometimes she just didn't have. You think about what the world was back then, pre-internet, pre-cell phone. You were pretty much relegated to your little 3 or 4 square mile radius. Wherever you went to church, wherever you did. And I grew up in the South, so it's even more so. And people from the South that were looking for something different obviously went to California, Chicago, New York, places like that. But people were kind of locked in, and it just wasn't customary to leave the nucleus of that family. And it was hard for women to do that. And so I get how I think now there's an overcorrection, right? Because now, women have formally educated themselves. They're starting businesses. They're infusing themselves in industries where they were underrepresented. They're making 6 figures, 7 figures, blowing up businesses. And it's like, I'm not dealing with any BS for men. And I get that. I totally get it. But the truth of the matter is, when I texted you about it, I was like, I think I sent you a voice clip. I was really like focused on like the data side of it. And it's like, when you look at the median income across the country for black men and black women, first of all, our people from other communities are still out earning us. They still have more household wealth. Education outcomes for their kids are better than ours. And so the fact that we have this infighting amongst the genders, for me, it's laughable, because outside of the spotted, anomalies, success stories of people that are just making absorbent amounts of money and they have it all, they got the family, they got this, we still collectively are hurting. Mm-hmm. So it's like the only way out, and I don't want to sound cliche when I say this, but the only way out is together. Like, we're not going to win individually and have that trickle down to where it has an impact in our communities across the board. It's not going to happen. And so it's like, I just think it's kind of like, I don't know, 2 siblings or, 2 people on a team, the quarterback is beefing with star receiver, and we trying to talk about, it's like Shaq and Kobe right now. Like, y'all need each other to win a championship. Right. Who's the franchise for? Us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's our team, so to speak. So I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. I think, like, I understand the female perspective and why we got to this point. But it's like, okay, I get it. You're making your 120, you 150, and what? Like your mama still live in the hood, like your cousin's still struggling. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm speaking collectively. Right. I'm not taking a shot, because I understand that we have pockets of black excellence. I get it. I'm personally fortunate. I have a very successful business. I got 2 beautiful daughters in college. I live a pretty privileged life at this point. I've worked the last 25 years to create it, but I would say that my firm is probably, when you talk about black businesses, probably in the top 10 percentile in terms of, where we've grown. And it's not a huge firm. It's just that our businesses in our community just are typically solopreneurship, so to speak. Yeah. And I'm fortunate enough to have a team and things of that nature. But when I think about my progression as a professional, as a father, as a community leader, the women that have been in my life through different phases of my life, I never viewed it as a competitive thing. And even the relationship that I'm in now, she does extremely well, financially and professionally. But I don't know. I don't know that it's if I earn more, then I have all the leverage. Or she earns more, she has all the leverage. It's just, to me, that's just an antiquated way of thinking. And I think we're trying to apply traditional things with contemporary things, and we haven't really figured out how to create the mix for what it is now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because when gas is $5 a gallon, I understand since you're making your $96,000 as a project manager, but you still, your head hurting when you pull up at the pump. You know, and his too. So, you know, y'all head might hurt a little bit less if y'all do this thing together. That's just how I see it.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point, which is what women were saying. They were saying, why can't we have it both? Why can't we have both? And awesome, we have another woman to join the discussion. And you guys, the reason why I'm really pushing for women to come on is because women say they want their voice to be heard. They want to explain themselves. Men aren't listening. And so this is an opportunity, ladies, to speak up. A lot of people watch this. A lot of people listen. A lot of men are really intrigued to understand why women think the way they do. And so getting to what Terry was saying, why can't there be both? I'm prepared to break that down. The issue that I hear, and welcome, Maya, welcome to the show. The issue that I hear from people is that when they get to a certain level in their career, they want the man to make more than they do. Have you guys heard that? Any of you heard that?
I've heard it. I've heard it, but maybe from a slightly different perspective than what you're laying out.
Okay.
I haven't heard women say that, you know, if she makes 200, he's got to make 210. I haven't heard that.
Okay, I get that a lot.
What I've heard is I need his earning power to be the baseline for our lifestyle. And if I can afford a $200,000 lifestyle, I don't want to have to dial that back as a result of, you know, being in a relationship or being in a marriage. I have heard that. But I'll withhold what my perspective is on that until you kind of finish laying the foundation. I don't want to.
Okay, thanks. Has anyone else heard that? A woman say, I want the man to take the lead financially?
So, in me being married, I initially probably wanted my husband to take the lead financially, but if we made it together, it would have been okay. But if I took the lead financially, it would have been okay for that. You know what I mean? If I made more and he didn't make as much as me, it was our empire together. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It wasn't mine. I mean, I always say what's mine is what his is mine, but it would have been ours together. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been our empire together. So it wouldn't have mattered because we would have ran the world together. It wouldn't have mattered if he made more or I made less.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because a lot of women say that. I had that same mindset. Let's unpack that mentality of, if I as a woman make the money, that's my money. And if my husband makes money, it's our money. Has anyone else heard that? I hear that a lot. Mike, it looked like you were shaking your head. Have you heard that? You haven't heard that? Okay. Y'all are so quiet tonight. Okay, well, I'm going to speak for the people in the comments who are very bold in the comments, who are like...
I've heard countless women say that they would like their money to be more of the discretionary, mm-hmm. right? As opposed to things that have to take care of, like, the foundational stuff for the house. Like, she would prefer, you know, for the man's income to take care of the mortgage and the utilities and tuition if the kids go to private school, that type of stuff. I've heard that. And, you know, a lot of couples that I know that have healthy marriages approach it that way, you know, where the man takes care of that core stuff. And, you know, that maybe a percentage of her income goes into savings or investments or whatever. And then she wants to just, you know, go and buy luxury bags and brunch with her friends and all of that type of stuff. Is not a big deal.
Yeah.
I have heard that. But I think we got to go back to, again, you know, and just based on the nature of what I do every day, I kind of look at this data. So when you look at what the average median income is for any family, but particularly African-American families, and when you start looking in, you know, certain markets where there's a high concentration of us, and you do the comparison between, and again, this is collective, right? Who makes more? So the narrative that Black men are lagging in education and attainment, that they're going to prison in disproportionate numbers, that the ones that are eligible don't want to be married. I think it's easy to jump on that bandwagon. And so then these statements about income and men being hard to find and stuff like that become almost rhetorical. I think, this is my opinion, I think a lot of women join that banter, and that may not necessarily either be their experiences, or it may be their experiences because of poor choices. But when we look at just the raw numbers, now I can't tell you married versus single, or what their sexual orientation is or whatever, but Black men's weekly median earnings collectively still higher than Black men. That's not by much, but it is. And then when we look at what it is, just the median, it ain't even enough money collectively for us to be beefing about money, if that makes any sense. And I think that for me, that's the part that keeps coming up. I understand these women that are in, that's a pediatrician, or that's, a highly sought after attorney, or that has a very successful business, and saying it may be hard for me to find, a man that is my financial equal. I don't think that, the project manager or the RN or the HR generalist should be having those same challenges just based on data that's irrefutable, right? So it's like at some point it comes down to that. What are the numbers saying? And the numbers say that there are lots of Black men out here that earn a livable wage.
I would agree.
You know what I'm saying? And so,
yeah,
I don't know. The narrative and the numbers don't add up for me.
I would agree 100%. Just looking off of the men who I have encountered, there are a lot of men who are doing well. There are a lot of men who also say, I don't like my options. So what I wanted to do was, have that conversation and walk through these theories that I am told all the time, which is that there aren't eligible bachelors. But you just mentioned the statistics show that there are men. The second thing that I hear women say, well, they're just not looking to get married. The reality is that a lot of these guys are intimate with the women. They will hang out with the women, but they're not proposing to the women. And to that I say, why do you think that is? This is where I say it's important for women to understand the nature of a man. What I get back from women is, why should I have to understand the nature of a man? I should be able to just have my cake and eat it too. I should just want what I want and get what I want. And this isn't bashing women. This is me trying to help women. Because what happens is, if you ask a woman about her marriageability, she will rattle off the number of men who want to sleep with her. And you have to remind her, somebody thinking that you'd be fun to sleep with is very different from someone thinking you would be a good partner and the mother of his children. So that is the dilemma that I see. First off, is that the women don't understand what men are even looking for. So when they are out there on the market, they're saying, oh, these men are just not the marrying type. There was an extremely eligible bachelor in the comments, one you and I both know personally. He's very eligible. And I would co-sign it for any girlfriend of mine. But he doesn't see femininity in women. And what men are looking for, because I speak to the men directly, they are looking for traditional wives. And the women are looking for traditional husbands. The only problem is that the men are ready to be traditional husbands. The women, overwhelming majority, are not prepared to be traditional women. And therein lies the problem. The modern woman wants the traditional man, but the traditional man does not want the modern woman. Therefore, the only solution is to be a traditional woman if you want a traditional man. But if you get a man who is not traditional, what I experience is women saying, I'm not attracted to him. Why? Because they're attracted to traditional men. What is a traditional man? A man who takes care of everything. But a man who takes care of everything expects not work ethic, a mental disposition that the women are saying is completely beneath them. Therein lies the issue from what I have seen. So it's hard to have, I could do a monologue. I do have a whole monologue prepared, but it would be nice to be able to, chat with the women who are experiencing this dilemma, because there was like serious triggering happening on this post. Like, people were really upset. They were really up in arms. They weren't connecting the dots. And so we have the most calm women on the panel tonight.
Yancey, I think the most powerful thing you just said was that it's about a mindset. And so we got to lose the literal interpretation.
Okay.
We're not literally saying that we want you to be your grandmother in a muumuu, cooking 7 days a week, taking care of kids, no professional identity, very little social identity, not traveling, not brunching, not going to the gym. That's not what we're saying. There are some traditional things that we do want to bring with us. The first of which is virtue. It's going to be extremely important to a man when they're looking at a potential wife.
And now, can we speak to that really quick? The virtue. Please don't lose your other ones. I did a post and I said, if you want to prepare to be a wife, or if you want to be a wife, something like that, think, what would I do if I was married? There were multiple comments saying, it shouldn't matter what I wear. That sounds ridiculous to consider a man. It was the complete opposite of a virtuous mindset. It was more so, nobody should have a say on how I dress and how I look besides me. It should be all for me, all for me, all for me. So I just wanted to punch that in when you're talking about virtue, because it's huge. Yeah.
I want to piggyback on what Terry said when he initially made his comment. He said, why can't you have both, right? And I think I'm 44, got engaged when I was 42. And I think my mentality in my 20s versus my mentality now as a 44-year-old woman is totally different, right? Like, in your 20s, you're trying to figure things out. You're trying to figure out how to pay your bills. If you don't pay your bills, your lights go off. And you're not really, your mentality, I wasn't thinking about marriage in my 20s, right? But I did have relationships.
Yeah.
I was just trucking along. But I think that in order, my fiance, he's Black. My mother's Asian, she's Vietnamese, and she's a very traditional woman. And this is somebody who's uneducated. She was married for 25 years to my father, my stepfather, and my father, biological father, for 15 years. But she was very traditional. Dinner was on the table every night. The house was spotless. She was a great mother, but my stepfather had 2 affairs on her, right? And she was stuck. So I think there's a combination of the modern woman has said, okay, let me secure my own bag, just because things don't always shake out. But I also have to be able to cater to my husband in a way that if he's a traditional man, he's successful, or if he's a successful man and he has a traditional mentality, how can I tap into my femininity and be both things? I can be a modern woman plus a good wife, right? If you want a successful marriage. And I think it's capable to be both. And I chimed in on your post and people were saying, oh, it's either or. And I just don't buy into that. I think that, I do cook 5 days a week, but on a Friday night, I don't want to cook dinner. I'm tired. I've worked all week, but I have a traditional husband or, future husband who's like, order Uber Eats, it's cool. It's whatever. It's a compromise.
Right.
And it's the way in which women communicate what their needs are. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It just has to be spoken softly and coming from a place of like how you genuinely feel as a woman, and it's okay to be tired. Whereas, our grandmothers, all they did was stay home. So they weren't working. So they had the energy to cook 7 days a week. So there's a delicate balance of being both. And I think you're totally capable of being both, but you really do need to learn men in their language. Because the last thing that they want to do is disappoint you, right? So they don't want to hear you complain, and they don't want to see you tired, and they And they're totally okay and supportive of you not cooking dinner 7 days a week, but it's in which how you handle it. I have a friend right now. She's a neighbor up the street. She's been in a relationship for 7 years, and out of nowhere, her fiance was like, I'm not happy. I've been unhappy for the last 6 months. I think that we should part ways. Totally blindsided her. Meanwhile, she stays at home. She's an at-home fiance, and she's kind of stuck. So to me, you know, my aunties, they taught me, have a little nugget for yourself. You don't ever know what's going to happen. People change their minds all the time. It happens. That's life. So I'm like, it doesn't have to be so black and white. You can have both. And if you have a supportive husband or fiance, he's going to want you to thrive in your life and bring your best self forth. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
No, I appreciate that, Maya. Before I respond to Maya's comment, did anyone else want to say anything?
I'll jump in there, Lady Yancy, to go ahead and reinforce what Maya just said. In my observation and experience, there are a lot of women who love, but do not love to learn. And there's a key difference with that. To learn the other person that you want to be with, to love their love languages, to love their gender language, all of that it's very, very important. You can't just love the idea of love and not put in the work to see what it takes to love another person who's different than you, because you are actually created completely differently. And in regards to the other questions from earlier, the original question with regard to delaying to work, a reason for this is the lack of this social safety net, particularly, for example, with regards to child rearing, with regards to careers and getting off the rung of the ladder that you're on for maternity leave. One can actually return on a lower rung, and therein lies a penalty. If you're in school trying to get education, the choice between paying for your class and paying for your child is a decision that a mother has to make. So that lack of a social safety net is a reason why sometimes I have seen women delay a marriage and whatnot in order to support themselves and somebody else. And in regards to, can women have both a successful career and a husband, I would say yes, because the gifts that you're given at birth, they can be used in either realm. The Bible says a dream deferred makes the heart sick. So women can both have a secular dream and a sacred dream.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I thought there was more, so I was being polite. Thank you so much. Now, you have gotten into, by the way, that those of you who are watching on Instagram, please come on YouTube. They take care of the content creators there, so it actually hurts if you're watching here and not over there. And I can't see any of your comments, so please come over here where I can read them. You have perfectly got us into the segue, because I wanted to break down the biggest issue that I see. So many times I hear women speak of ideals. It would be nice. It would be nice. It would be nice if. And there is a way that everyone can get everything that they want. And it's through divine energy. There is so much that is required if you move in just masculine and feminine energy. Because if you think about it, masculine and feminine energy requires equilibrium. And so for a lot of men who are just operating in masculine energy, it can either be a turnoff that the woman is completely self-sufficient, because there are men who really, really like being the provider. And it is an ego, it is a little bit of a dig to their ego when the woman not only can provide for herself, but makes way more than him. There are some men who feel like, well, what the heck is my role then if I'm not doing that? And they feel like they don't have a purpose, because masculine energy is about doing. So you don't see a lot of men saying, well, I want to be a stay-at-home husband. I want to be a kept husband. Men who have high masculine energy really like to go out and get it. But they also are attracted to feminine. And so in the natural realm, a woman who is about the bag, she is in her masculine energy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she has to understand that in the natural realm, what I refer to as the matrix all the time, in the natural realm, that is going to repel if the person has wounded masculine energy or doesn't know how to pivot. It takes a lot for a man to not find his identity in provision. This is why so many men, when they stop being athletes, like they played sports their whole lives and they finally stop or they retire or things like that, that usually defines them. Like a lot of women put their image, self-image into being a mother or something. And so when their kids are up out of the home, they're like, what the heck do I do with my life? So people are asking humans to do something that requires divine energy. In order to have a mindset that it's all about the family, we are completely a unit, I have you until the end of time, that requires tapping into something that is outside of us. Because as humans, we're very, we very much have a ledger. It's like, what did you contribute? What did I contribute? It's very scorekeeping. And so there are expectations. And I will say this, and it's difficult because it's hard, and a lot of women really struggle with any kind of a criticism. But what I see from the outside looking in, there is a very combative attitude for a lot of women. You can't tell me nothing. You're not my dad. It's a very combative energy that is trying to be, it's trying to compete with the man. And competing energy is not attractive energy. You want opposite energy. So if a man is leading, he's not attracted to a woman who's also trying to lead. If a woman is just being, she's not attracted to a man who's just being. Now both of y'all are just being. Like there's no polarity. And so it's difficult for a natural woman, in my opinion, to get into the space of a career because it requires her to stay in her masculine in order to win. You have to keep a certain energy to keep going and keep going. And so many women say to me, I don't know how to turn it off. It sounds ideal to 9 to 5 boss people around and then come home and be like, okay, what would you like for dinner? Frankly, if I am out busting my tail, I don't want to cook anything. If I was a lady of leisure, that's different. Okay, I can get up, go grocery shopping, take my time sauteing vegetables. If I'm coming home from a 8-hour workday, then you got the commute on top of that. I just want to come home and take out my bra. Like I'm not trying to go stand in the kitchen in a hot steam. It was a lot.
Yancy, I have to say though, it's 2022, and I'm not trying to, I'm in agreement with you, but I do think that there's so many alternatives. There's Instacart, there's Grubhub.
Oh, yeah.
You could order a gourmet. I live in New York, so we have every type of food you can imagine. You want Indian tonight, you want Chinese. There's so many different options, but like there's Instacart. When I'm tired, I Instacart and I don't care. I'll pay it extra. There's
but your fiance doesn't care.
I can order. I order every plate, and they literally give you a menu of food. Like, here's the menu, and here's all the ingredients you need, and it takes 30 minutes to cook. I just think it's a cop-out. Like, for 30 minutes, I can't dedicate my time to my family so they eat a healthy meal. I'm tired. Don't get me wrong. I'm exhausted. But for me, it's like, where's the priority? And it's a delicate balance. My career is I make 6 figures. I'm an executive. I climbed the corporate ladder. I went to college when my son was born. I went back to school, and I'm not trying to brag, but at the end of the day, it's like my priority is in my family. And I work hard for 8 hours, but I clock out at 5 o'clock, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm doing the dishes. I'm doing a lot, but my man also recognizes that. And he rewards me in his love language, right? Whatever that might be. And it works for me. And I've had to learn, like, when I know him so well that I know In the morning, I can ask him for anything because he's a morning person. At nighttime, he just wants to watch the Celtics play. He wants to be left alone. And I fill my own cup. I don't depend on him to make me happy. He has the sprinkles on top of the sundae. That's it. You know, I think a lot of women are looking for men to make them happy and complete them. You're going to be looking for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, look at Jada Pinkett, for example. She feels like a bird in a golden cage because Will built her dream house. And, you know, he planned her birthday for 3 years, and that still isn't enough. This man just went and slapped a man on stage, and that's not enough because she's not fulfilling her own self. She's like blaming Will for her unhappiness. She's just unhappy with herself, period. So that's the way I look at it. And I think a lot of women are looking for men to come save them. You're going to be looking for the rest of your life. Men don't come and save you. And they're not your father. They're not going to love you the same way as your father. They're your lover. You know what I mean? They're going to love you in the bedroom. And they're going to recognize your efforts if they appreciate you. And if they don't, you just keep it moving. But I've dated men who were on a higher caliber than me. And then they had deal breakers. Those deal breakers didn't work for me. You know, they wanted to come and go as they pleased. They thought they had all this money. But I had my own money. So it didn't matter. You know what I mean? Their deal breakers didn't mirror mine. So
yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I think that's where I struggle with resonating with what I'm saying. I have no way that I'm advocating for. I am not saying it should only be this way. It should only be this way. My goal is to show people, if you're choosing this is the package that comes with it from a natural standpoint. Now, if you want to talk about divine, which you're getting into a lot of the divine stuff, that's what I'm doing an entire course on. That's the ideal. But I think a lot of people are going to mortals and asking them to do things that are divine. To ask a woman to work the entire day just like you do, but then come in and then also take on the cleaning by herself, that's a lot. So that requires that man to then say, okay, I'm not just going to be the traditional man who works all day. I'm going to also come home and split the house, the chores and things like that. It requires someone to move. The issue that I see with women is that they are saying, I want this traditional guy. I want a very set package, but I don't want to be the complement to that package. Everything that you said, there was someone compensating. If I don't do this, he compensates for that. If he doesn't do this, I compensate for that. That is what is required to have that balance. But what I see is the woman who is going out, making it her career, staying in her masculine energy, attitude, everything, and then wondering why he's picking the feminine woman over her, who makes him feel like he's actually benefiting her life in some way. That's the part that I have a problem with. It's that I want to act like a man, completely act like a man, and then I'm wondering why a man is repelled by me. I want women to see what they are asking for. There's a couple of comments, you guys. You got some amens, Maya, by the way, in the comments. Coaches, I think therapy for entering a relationship is key. Therapy, find Jesus, everything. Black folks, men and women especially, it's really the starting point of having healthy relationships. And also to piggyback on what Maya was saying about people looking to be saved, you're absolutely right. A lot of women don't enjoy their lives. They feel like it's on hold, and they are waiting for the man to come in and save them and make that life start. I was 100% like that. So I don't think that it needs to be a career. I think, actually, this is a point that I should make. I think that a lot of women have swung the pendulum. There is a difference between being completely fulfilled spiritually, meaning like who you are, how you sleep at night, versus trying to get that out of a career. I just watched a little bit of the clip with Viola Davis and Oprah Winfrey. And Viola was saying that when the pandemic hit, she kind of had this crisis where she had all these accolades. She's broken so many records as a Black actress, and she's had all these accomplishments, major success, and it was kind of like, I don't feel anything. And a lot of times people, when they're in their masculine energy, they think that if I can achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve, I'll finally get to a level of like, I have arrived. And so I think that instead of looking inward, a lot of women are projecting outward and saying, I'm going to make that career my thing that makes me feel good. And they have a lot of fear. And so they take that fear and say, I'm going to calm this fear that I'm not going to have enough by going on and getting their own. I'm actually interested to hear what Mike has to say on that piece specifically, about, it's basically idolizing money. Like, because everything I kept hearing was, I got to do it for the money because I don't want to be stuck with money. I don't want a man to not give me money. It's this emphasis being put on the money. And I'll read one more question and see if you guys have anything you want to say. I believe any reasonable man that sees that his wife will pitch in. It's heartbreaking when I hear women talk about men. I feel we are unreasonable and do not care for our women. I don't do 50-50 with any woman. If you make the money, then you can carry the freight. In my mind, she can buy the food, pay for the cable and her car because I didn't buy it, and her sell.
Yeah, he sounds a little he sounds a tiny bit bitter in my opinion, but that's just what I think. But I'm definitely enjoying the conversation, and I just feel like a lot of these conversations need to be had between two people who are interested in dating. You need to understand what tradition means for y'all, for the two of you. You need to understand that, number one. Y'all have to communicate about these kinds of things. And I definitely, whoever said in the comment that people need to try therapy before being in a relationship, I agree. Because I am seeing way too many unhealed people all over social media, like commenting all over, their opinions about all of these people who have these conversations with other people. And all of them just look like unhealed man children and man women. I'm sorry. Or, you know what I mean? Like their little inner child is talking for them. You know what I'm saying? And I'm noticing that a lot.
Yeah. Because
I had to get to a point where there was a lot of things I had to heal. There was a few things that you mentioned that was basically my entire relationship. Mm-hmm. My last relationship was about, 2022? It was about maybe 4 years ago now. And he and I, it was a power struggle. Mm-hmm. It was a power struggle. And it was exhausting. It was very, very exhausting. You know what I'm saying? Because he and I both wanted the same things. He and I were very incompatible, and we went about it like in different ways. He had his idea of a traditional woman, and I had my own idea where I really wanted to focus on my career. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to solidify myself without necessarily needing a man. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I wanted one. I made sure that he felt wanted, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't need him. But that was also wrong thinking, though. Right. So, yeah, I had let's just say that I did a lot of therapy myself, and I had to get to a place of where I would feel comfortable in my next relationship, because I would like for my next one to be my last. Right. You know what I'm saying? I would like for it to reach marriage, So there was a lot of, staring in the mirror that I had to do, a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, and a lot of ways that I had to get to be like, who am I and what is going to make me happy with or without a relationship? What is going to make me happy in the man that I want in a relationship? And, those kinds of things. Therapy couldn't answer those questions for me, so I had to answer them for myself. Yeah. But I'm noticing a lot of, a lot of comments on a lot of different platforms where it's really people's inner childs going back and forth with each other. And I'm like, yo, I can't. You know what I'm saying? I can't, That's just my opinion.
There's a lot of pain and there's a lot of unrealistic expectation. I think the biggest thing is the validation.
A lot of entitlement.
Yeah. I think the entitlement a lot of times comes from a need for validation. As human beings, we all need to feel validated. We all need to feel worthy. And people find that or not find it, they chase it in things. Some women chase it in likes on social media. Some men chase it in sex. Oh, if I can get a woman to sleep with me and I feel like I'm powerful. Some people seek it in money, in status, like how high can I get in the totem pole? But at the end of the day, and y'all know that I have a faith in God, so I'm going to go there. Unless you get your validation from God, you are going to be spazzing, so to speak, emotionally. And when you're not happy inside, it's easier to project that onto your partner. I would have been happier if you had done this. You're holding me back from this. Being really transparent, the thing that stressed me out in my marriage was that my husband was killing it. and I hadn't figured out how to discipline myself. So it was embarrassing that I now had a person who I was living with was just like, just kept seeing me drop the ball, kept seeing me drop the ball, while they're steadily just whoosh, whoosh, doing everything they're supposed to do, making these shots, so to speak. And I'm just dropping the ball and dropping the ball and dropping the ball. And I felt so defensive because it's easier to be defensive than, admit you're embarrassed and just say, I suck. And when the person doesn't know how to give you the tools, because you can't give someone those tools, it puts them in a really awkward situation. And so I think I like to use this analogy that relationships are like mirrors. When you are completely single and also don't have people in your life who are honest with you, it's like living in an apartment with no mirrors, no reflections on any kind of glass. And you're walking around. You could have crazy hair and food on your face, but you would never know. If you get in a relationship, it's like hanging a mirror on the wall. And then you pass by and you're like, oh, that's hideous. And instead of reaching for your face to wipe it off, you break the mirror and go get another one.
I think Shantae hit the nail on the head. Self-awareness is lacking. People are not self-aware. They don't want to hold themselves accountable. They don't want to do the work. That's what Mike had said. When women are in love with the idea of love, but they're not interested in learning how to operate from a place of love for their partner that works for their partner, not them. It's not about you in a relationship. It's about your partner and like what works for them.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that when we are forced to relate with another person, it brings something out of us. That's why when you have children, there's another level. You might have thought you were a patient person until you're dealing with a 2-year-old. You might have thought you had self-control until you dealt with a teenager. It's easy to say, I have all these characteristics if it's never put to the test. So when you have a partner, you're forced to relate to them. And this is why I say there's two things. One, you have to be so careful of who you choose. Because so many people choose a partner and they go off of these surface level things. They don't even give it the time to actually see when those other things are going to come out, because it will come out. Over time, you give it more than 90 days, you're going to see their temper. You're going to see the lack of patience. You're going to see the laziness. You're going to see the lack of self-awareness. If you don't even know what to look for, you're going to miss all that. And then if you're so desperate for validation, you're going to see it, but you're going to justify it in your mind because you're like, but dang, they're so cute and they're available. So you just make all these excuses. And then when all the little buzz wears off, you're like, dang, I saw all that. And then you feel stupid because you're like, I saw that and I still went forward. And so, I just realized you had your hand raised. I'm so sorry, sir. You can just jump on in. I think that it's one of those things where we can actually grow. I grew immensely in the marriage. It was really, really awkward because I wanted to come in and just have my stuff not stink and him just be like, oh my God, you're the bee's knees. And it was like, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, and that's awkward. Go ahead, Mr. Charles.
Good evening. First thing I would say is, for those who are watching on this YouTube platform, Instagram, please support this young lady on this platform. This is very needed, informational, beautiful platform. And I apologize for the couple weeks that I've been out. But I wanted to say that first before I got in here. I kind of feel like I'm in an alternate universe with everything that's been said. There was a book that was written many years ago. I think it was Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. So if that book was actually written in 2022, it would be Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and millennials are from the planet validation, entitlement, and feelings.
Ooh.
I think we spend too much time trying to figure out this millennial state of mind that is actually trying to govern and change what it is that relationships are all about. And it has turned what generally is about love, and again, I've stated this 4 weeks ago, reciprocal energy between two human beings into a business arrangement, and it's sickening. The best way for me to kind of explain this is to basically just tell my story quickly. I'll try not to be too long, but I'll be as transparent as I need to be. So I entered a HBCU in 1990, met my then wife within 2 weeks of being in that HBCU. We did the thing. And we, set out to, again, go there and get our degrees. And we completed our degrees at this HBCU. But in that period of time, we had work study. We participated in extracurricular activities in the school. We did what we had to do. We also even had our children during that period of time before we got married. At the end of the day, in school, we know why we came to school, and it wasn't to shack up and have kids. It was to get those degrees. And that meant even myself and even my, then wife at that time, we took our children to school. I had my daughter in class, sitting in class, taking classes, because that's what I went to school for, not to have kids, but to get that education, to get that pigskin, to better myself. And we survived off of college work study. Back then, college work study was $5 an hour. At the end of the day, it was what we had is what we had to survive. We knew we were in school to get the careers, to get the higher education, to get the better jobs. But if it was all about what career I had getting into a relationship with her and vice versa, we would have had the kids, dropped out of school, and then picked up some type of warehouse, some type of whatever job, and not stayed focused on exactly what we came to college for. Fast forward many years later, we both working and flourishing in our career, getting higher degrees, master's degrees, Jewish doctorate degrees, and all other kind of stuff, clearances to work with the government, the whole nine, 6 figures individually. After 21 years, she woke up differently. So she's now my ex. But I say this to say, if it was all about a business arrangement, that would have ceased many years ago. And today, it's the social media ethics of relationship is all about teaching everybody to get this quote unquote bag. I'm looking for this bag so I can burn it. I'm tired of hearing about this D bag. What is this bag? I can't stand the colloquialisms of modern day trending words and stuff like that. I hate it. But if you're chasing something that at the end of the day, most of these folks that are chasing a bag are parking a high dollar vehicle with a 25% interest rate on that vehicle, but then you're still buying food stamps from somebody in your family. You're taking trips with your girlfriends and your people every other weekend, but your parents are raising your kids, but half of your body is coming out of a bag from Mei Ling's shop, but then you want the man to do this and do that. Who are you laying down with? And who is he laying down with? We are so social medially driven that we are intelligently and individually unidentified. So for me, chasing these Thundercats and trying to validate these Thundercats, this grown man don't have time for it. I'd rather spend time mentoring and trying to educate those who believe in, again, first, God's word for relationships, love, and marriage, and what he has for us when we believe, again, when we know what he says to love each other, love each other as God has loved the church, and then love your neighbor. And when we approach relationships in a reciprocal manner, I love you because you love me. Some days you may have to carry it. Some days I carry you. You carry me, vice versa. Again, the picnic in the park. Let's share a hot dog. Let's share a bag of chips. Let's go to McDonald's and get the old school $1 ice cream cone. You take a couple licks, I take a couple licks. Who are we trying to impress with the steak 48 in Houston that you see on everybody's YouTube video? But ain't nobody got their own teeth.
That's it.
But we want to quote steak 48. We want to quote all this other kind of colloquial stuff, and everybody's chasing a bag. Show me the bag, and I will burn it for you all. Anybody online, I'll burn it for you.
Oh my God.
Because we have to learn to prioritize what really is important for our life. And right now, there are people hurting that truly want to be loved by someone. They truly want to be loved, honored, respected, and the whole nine. But as long as people are chasing trends, fads, and the next social media post that has no nothing behind it, they're going to be hurting. And there's going to be more broken relationships, more divorces, because those who should be, as Miss Maya said, doing the 6-figure job, 9 to 5, taking that half an hour to spend and invest that time in her family with a home-cooked meal, even though she's done the executive piece, that half an hour means so much to her husband and her family, because it just says, no matter what I'm doing there, you guys mean so much more to me here. Those little subtle things mean a lot. But, you know, I'm off my soapbox.
No, it's good. It's good. I appreciate that.
I love it.
They're cracking up in the comments about the bag. I'm cracking up because last time Ida had her hand raised, and her hand emoji is way too similar to the wall color, and so I just realized that I just thought I missed like 30% or half the show last time with not realizing your hand was up. So Ida, feel free to jump in. Thank you, Mike. So
mine might be just a taint along, just like Michael, but I was going to say, as Yancy, Shantae, and Maya was saying, there's a TV show called, I had Googled it, Secretary of State, Madam Secretary, where she is a boss in the world, but when she comes home, she submits to her household, and she submits to her husband. He's not like as high as she is as it comes to business, but she submits to her household in that. So, but I wanted to start off by saying, like, I'm recently divorced, as I had said previously. I got divorced March 21st after being married for it would have been 22 years this year. I got married at 20. Yeah, recent. And I will say that when I first got married, I didn't understand how to be loved, right? I had 2 children prior, and again, I was found. I wanted to get divorced 3 times in the beginning because I was like, why does he love me? Like, when is the other shoe going to drop? When other people told me they loved me, they wanted to have sex. This man came into my life, and if my shirt came up, he pulled it down. We went to church together. That's what our dating life consisted of. We dated for maybe 2 months, and then we were married. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And Shantae said, I was not healed. My mother had just died the year previously. I was only 19 years old, but I got married at 20. So I didn't know myself. I was a mother at 16 and then 19 again. So I didn't know myself well enough to say, hey, I can love this man, because I didn't love myself enough. And so, and then listening to Michael, sharing the ice cream cone, no, not so much, but we did picnics in the house. If we didn't have it, we would lay down a blanket and share a meal. But if he didn't have it, I had it. If I didn't have it, he had it. You know what I mean? And even with Maya saying, I went to work and I worked. And then I learned that my house was maintained, right? I would come home and cook a meal, and I learned to go and launder my clothes. Like, I pay the people, they took care of my clothes, and I went back and picked them up. My household was maintained because I went to school. He didn't. I went back at 28. I have 4 children. My oldest, in which I have not been to sleep, so I'm a little sleep deprived. She's in the Navy. She will be 26. My number 2, I number him because it's so many. My number 2 is 23. He graduated from college last year. I have an 18-year-old that's coming out of high school this year. And my number 4 is a freshman You know what I mean? And so, but it was very difficult. But I'm maintaining my household. I went back and got my master's degree, so I had to figure out how to do this balance of being married, still not getting the bag, but being able to maintain my household and leave a legacy of generational wealth, and not poverty in my family, in my bloodline, to show them how to maintain a healthy relationship and what that looked like. But only I wasn't doing that. I was killing myself, right? I was dying on the inside, right, because again, I didn't know what real love looked like. And so I'm saying a lot, and
that's good.
But I was unhealed. And so now we're two broken people, and we're trying to heal well, right? Because now I'm looking back at my life, and I'm like, a lot of stuff that we went through in our marriage, I'm like, you didn't tell me a lot of that stuff. You didn't give me a chance to course correct. And Reggie's been on here, and he'll tell you, you know, he didn't give me a chance to course correct. I like truth people. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me I got that on my face, so I can wipe my face. Don't have me out there looking stupid.
Me too.
You know, like tell me. But I didn't get a chance to course correct and change things up to get it right. And so now I'm in a place where I have to heal. I have therapy, and I love Jesus, right? Because he's the bomb diggy, and I'll tell everybody that'll listen. I live by the word of God, and now it's one of those things where I have to maintain my household now by myself, you know, and I say I want to be loved again, but I don't know if I want to be loved again.
We want to be loved properly. I
want to be loved, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know where I was going with all of this, but
no, you're good.
I need to heal well. I want my children, and then like even during the divorce, I needed to respond well because my children were watching.
Right.
So I couldn't do certain things. I couldn't say certain things, and because of who I am in Christ, I wanted to make sure that I was representing Him well. Because of who was watching. Anyway, I'll digress and shut up.
No. I think it's really good to share that. I'm multitasking, guys, because speaking of kids, I'm a mom, and so I'm trying to call an Uber as I'm doing this show. So if I look down, I'm not trying to be rude. That's why. But I think it's really important. There's so much that I want to say. By the way, thank you, Philly Mike, so much. That was the most generous I've ever received on YouTube. So thank you so much for the $50. I really appreciate that. It's actually going to go to my son for his prom. By the way, you guys can look at my story and see his awesome suit we picked out today. Anyway, but I think there are two things, and you guys watching, I'm going to start doing content specifically the people who want to get in the relationship and the people who are in the relationship, because I have started doing coaching, the couples coaching. That's one of my favorite things to do because I love bridging the communication gap. That's where it all started. And I have noticed that there is so much confusion between the genders. We really don't, like, even if you're healed, even if you have all this stuff going on, so many women don't understand the nature of a man. And I was realizing that one of the guys told me this, and it made it easier to understand. He said, men want to get laid. So they study women. We're not going to pat them on the back as to their ammunition, but they learn. They have to learn. They test things. They see what sticks, what doesn't stick. Let's see what gets the girl, what doesn't. So they have to learn. With women, we can just walk outside and get attention. Men, because of how women are wired, they have to do something to earn that attention. And so women often go through life never learning what it is specifically that men want. And then with men, we're just really confusing, I think. Honestly, as women, we tend to be more passive of the two. We have lots of emotions, and so we're just so different. One is not better and one is not worse, but we're so different, and so much gets lost in translation. And I have a theory that I think that any couple can actually save their marriage. I think any couple can get back together, because the things that I have been discovering, it's never the lack of love. To this day, I've never seen a lack of love. It has been two people who get burnt out because their tank is not getting full. And at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead.
I honestly think with men, like, respect is more important than love.
Oh,
right?
it's the ultimate. It's
their
the
love
ultimate.
language is so different. And I think, like, if I were a man, I would marry you. You sound like a perfect woman.
It took me a lot of hell to get here.
But I would say, like, because I've had to learn men, because I wanted a relationship to work so so much
Yes.
because I was very masculine in my energy. But like what I think I've learned is that I have tools in my toolbox. So like my therapist, she knows everything about me. I dump on her. I am emotional with her. I let her know when I'm miserable, and she gives me tools and helps me like navigate and understand him.
Yeah.
And like you said, Yancy, you're a coach, so that's helpful. But like, there's a lot of power in our silence, and I had to learn that because I was so used to hearing my voice for so long, and I realized like no one's listening but me, and so it's exhausting.
Right.
And it's just not easy because I think men and women are so different. We are so different. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's super, super true. I want to share, I'll probably do a show next week because obviously we had to pivot today because my desire coming on, I really wanted women to share firsthand their dilemma. And a lot of you guys seem like you've done the work, the women who are on the panel, so it's obviously not a knock to you. But you guys have done the work, and it doesn't sound like you are struggling to try to figure out what it is that makes a man want to. Oh, and I forgot, Mike, you had your hand up, so I'm gonna go to you first. Actually, let me go to you first, and then I'm gonna share what I was going to share about next week.
I wanted to go back to that topic that we keep, referring to, which is how money affects relationships, and to define that a little further, as the way the Bible talks about it, which is that the love of money is the root of all evil. So, therefore, evil can manifest in many ways, and it can manifest in terms of pride, and pride is destructive in a relationship. So we have to remember that money is for provision, not for completion. And likewise, marriage is also not for completion, as we have referenced earlier. So if money is the object of the marriage, then the marriage is idolatry. Ooh. And we have to reframe our marriage.
Yeah. No, 100%. I always think that there's another sentence coming. I'm like, No, it's 100%. And what do you guys think about this dilemma, which is, it's a real thing. Let me back up, actually. So the point I was going to say is this dilemma of women feeling like, if he decides to move on, what do I do? Because there is a total dependence when you come in. So there are a couple of scenarios. There could be a scenario where people start a business together. I've heard people say that. I actually think it's really cool, where everyone's hand is in it. So therefore, even if they do a split, they each have their part. I think it is a difficult thing it's a difficult thing for a lot of women to imagine completely being dependent on a man. And over and over and over again, I look at what the comments say, and it's, I don't want to be dependent. Or even before I got married, I didn't have any suitors, so I just focused on getting money so that I wouldn't be dependent. I didn't want to wait for a man to take me, and provide for me. And I want to add this little piece. If we think about back in the day, as far as the second part, which is, I don't want to wait around until I get a man to be able to eat. That's why society had it set up to where girls stayed home with their parents. But modern women, a lot of times, push back, and they're like, I want the freedom. I want to do what I want to do. And a lot of times, dads are strict. More so the dads, if the dads are in the home. So the woman decides, do I want to go out and be fast and do what I want to do? And the other thing is bucking the system. As human nature, we tend to not like to submit. But a woman is forced to submit when she has a very strong role model, male role model. So staying at home is usually less appealing to a woman because I'm grown. I'm 18. I don't want to have to listen to my dad. And also, I want to do what I want to do. So now she goes out. Now there's this dilemma. She has to provide. And I would still say, even if you felt like you had to go out, because some people don't have dads, some people's moms kick them out, whatever. But if you really, 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 really did it just to get by, you could technically have a girlfriend or two. Move into a place, split the bills, whatever. But the reality is, and I have a client like that. She ended up getting pregnant, and so she moved in with a friend. But then they start having relationship issues. Even though it's not a romantic relationship, relationships force you to pay attention to what you're doing. You know, it force you to look inward. That's why roommates are not usually preferred, because you're stuck recognizing who that person is and you. And so growth is required. But so there's that situation. So now women have these bills. So like my bills are not going to stop just because I'm single. And so what do you guys have to say as far as advice goes to the woman who's watching this, who says, I want to do this the right way. You know what? I'm going to go old school. I'm going to stay at home until I get married. Cool. Now my father has passed me off until, because that's why the dad stands there with the wedding bells, by the way, you guys. I've taken care of her all the way up until this point. Now I'm passing the baton to you to take care. Someone said no one's going to love you like their father, but they're supposed to. They're supposed to actually exceed the love of a father. They're supposed to love the woman as Christ loved the church. Christ gave his life for the church and didn't require anything back. So it's like the dad on steroids. But what do you say to the woman who now is totally financially dependent on the husband, and he decides, you know, he wants to leave? What is that dilemma? What is the solution for that woman who is saying, that's just scary to me? I want to do it, but it's really, really scary. The idea he could just walk away. I know I threw a million things at you guys, but just the last one.
I grew up seeing that in my grandmother's household, because that's who raised me. And the thing is that being a cycle breaker, like I know of myself to be, from the things that I've noticed in my dysfunctional family to what I'm trying to break, to what I'm trying to raise my children to do and be. My answer to that would be, number one, is to have your own. Even if you're still living at home with your father or with your parents, whatever the case may be, if that woman doesn't want to be completely financially dependent on a man, then I think that the right man for her would encourage her to also have her own, along with being in the relationship, we build together. Like, it's okay to have your own, your own separate account. You know what I'm saying? Like, for whatever it is that you may want to do. Like, my grandmother, she did teach me that and I think she taught me that because she was financially dependent on my grandfather. She also did work, and yes, she also kept the home and raised the 3 children and all of that. But I will say that my grandfather, he also had other issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was an alcoholic and things like that. Mm-hmm. But she would teach me from a place of anger too. Right. Like, she would be like, you know what? Don't ever depend on no man for nothing, and da-da-da-da-da. And I just remember seeing that and listening to it as a kid. Like, I'm a kid. I don't want any parts of this. I don't understand what you're talking about, right? But for me, when I saw the dysfunction and when I actually learned about what was really going on, codependency and things like that, and, just staying with, whoever just because you have children with them, it's not me being financially dependent. He's the breadwinner, so what else am I supposed to do? Well, what you're supposed to do is solidify yourself as a woman first, as a man too. Who are you? What are you going to do? What are you going to bring to the world? You know what I'm saying? She needs to figure that out as well. And if she doesn't want to be financially dependent, she should also have her own. You know what I'm saying? Like, be able to pick up and move on. If this, if the relationship or marriage doesn't work out, you should be able to, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, because it's not. And I've experienced both aspects of it, which is why, I can speak on it, but definitely be able to have your own, to be able to just start back over, I don't know if any of that made sense, but hopefully it did.
I totally get what you're saying. I'm curious from the guys, if you got married and the woman says, it's really scary, I'm choosing to be a homemaker. Let's say you guys both agreed for her to be a homemaker. I want to be the homemaker. I want to focus on the kids. I don't want anyone else to be a part of rearing them. I really take this seriously. But I have this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I'm completely dependent on you, and it's scary. What would you guys advise her? Or if she said, I want to have a stash that's just for me, how would that make you feel as her husband?
I think there's such a minuscule percentage of men, and particularly Black men. And I know we're saying that we need to steer the conversation away from money to an extent. But, I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? So even a Christian marriage where there is a holy covenant, or if it's not a Christian marriage, just any faith-based marriage, where there's a holy covenant, there's still a civil union. And the civil union calls for sharing and dividing and disseminating of assets. Like marriage is not just a mechanism for facilitating love and having kids. It historically has been about building legacy, protecting legacy, wealth creation, wealth preservation, and things of that nature. So it's a part of it. Whether now should it be a disproportionate part of it? No, because it taints it. But I guess what I'm saying is there's such a minuscule percentage of men, and particularly Black men, that earn enough money to say you stay at home and prioritize the home. It's such a slim percentage, just given, again, when we look at the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, a man could make 60 grand and account for his entire household. Now it's difficult for a man to make 120 grand and to totally account for his household. And so when you look at the very, very slim percentage of men that even make 60, let alone the 120, it's almost like I get having that conversation in theory, but when we cook down to, what these people, and look, and it has nothing to do with education attainment or intellect or any of that. It has to do with what vocation you select. So if a man decides that he's going to go into education and he's a middle school principal, he's probably not going to be able to have 2 nice vehicles, a mortgage, pay for groceries, gas, health insurance, utilities, and so on and so forth on his $86,000 salary. So from a personal perspective, because everybody's kind of giving their testimony, from a personal perspective, I don't want to be in a relationship with a woman that is not interested in identifying her authentic vocation and exploring that as an outlet for having impact on the world. And then the money is just a byproduct of that. So for me, it's not about focusing on the money. I do not want a woman that loses her identity in our relationship because it stimulates resentment at some point. It also makes her feel very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So when there are these conflicts that are inevitable, and she subconsciously knows that I don't even have the leverage to leave.
Right.
I haven't honed my skills. I haven't prioritized my education. I haven't built the relationships. So I have to, at some point, concede on some level, unless I decide to leave and just, explore all of my, I guess, legal recourse. And, even though I wasn't with you shooting in the gym, as they say. But my point is that I just don't think that in most cases in 2022 that it leads to healthy outcomes, unless, maybe there's some other, mitigating circumstances around it. Like she comes from money, or, she was able to stack her chips before she got into the marriage, or whatever the case is. Grandma left for $1 million life insurance policy.
Or they run a business together.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, from my personal perspective, I want a woman to identify what her purpose is on this earth, and I'm going to use all my time, talents, financial resources, and so on and so forth for her to pursue that. Now, the home doesn't become secondary, but it's a collective responsibility. And at the end of the day, I would much rather put resources behind her having the support mechanisms that she needs in order to not have to be exhausted and cook, or to not have to, do domestic things on the weekend, as opposed to going to play tennis or, going to volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever her thing is. I would rather put resources behind the support mechanisms than to have it to where she has to feel like she's being less than a wife or less than a mother for not prioritizing those things. I think that's antiquated. And I think it's antiquated because, and again, I hate to keep going back to the financial, but salaries have not kept pace with inflation over the past 40 or 50 years. So it pretty much, I'm going to say, and look, some people are probably going to say that's an unrealistic number, but this is my number. I'm thinking if a man ain't doing at least $220 to $250 a year, I can't imagine why he would be telling his wife to 100% prioritize the household. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of financial sense to me. And in most cases, it's not even feasible.
And who's taking care of the kids in this scenario?
That's what I'm saying. It's a joint responsibility. And again, this is how I've done it. Now, I'm that dad. I'm coaching the AAU team. I'm at every game, at every conference. So my kids have always been a priority. But for me, it was about the fluidity of how we managed our lifestyle. So it wasn't about these are your responsibilities and these are my responsibilities and being rigid about it. It's about these are joint responsibilities. So if you need to do something different on Tuesday than we do on Thursday in order to make this work, it's just what it is. But it's never, for me, it was never about this is masculine, responsibilities. These are feminine responsibilities. And I'm too good to sit at the table and help with homework, or too good to cook, or too good to pick up food, or whatever the case is. But I just always felt.
If I can, though, but literally, let's just say you have this, she gets pregnant, she has the baby. You're only allowed to stay home like 6 weeks, I think. Ladies, correct me, it's been a while since I've been.
Right.
That's about right.
Okay, so after the 6 weeks, who is raising this child? Like, who's teaching it to walk? Who is feeding it? Who's, like, where? I feel like we have these theories about women working, but when you've actually been a mother, it's like a whole different thing. So I'm like, who's raising the kid? If the woman is out of the home, who's raising the kid? I had the privilege of staying, so I'm genuinely asking, like, who is raising these kids?
So my oldest daughter, I adopted her. So she was 3 when I met her. My youngest daughter, my biological, so I was there from, conception until now. Early on in their childhood, I wasn't rolling in the money. I was probably 32, 33 before I really got traction and started making 6, and my business got to 7 figures and that type of thing. So when my youngest daughter, after 10 weeks of, mom being at home, mom went back to work and the baby went to daycare. Now, we did find a really boutique daycare where there was only, a few kids, and it was very nurturing, very hands-on, and it was people that we knew really well. But yeah, they went to daycare early on. Now, would I do that now? No, I wouldn't do it now. But again, it's a different time and space. Most people are working virtually, working from home. It's just a different time. So yeah, I would surround, if my wife is an executive in corporate, or she's running her own business, or whatever her thing is, I'm not going to say that you have to defer that thing in order to stay at home with the kids. I'm going to say, what ecosystem do we need to build around our household so that you don't lose yourself in parenting, or you lose yourself in the marriage? And whatever that means. We need to have domestic support in the house. We need to have somebody driving. We need to have somebody cooking. We need to have somebody that's, can help to babysit, whatever the case is, tutors, whatever it is, at whatever level the kids are at. That's the philosophy that I subscribe to.
So I remember looking one time with my husband, and he said, in order for it to actually financially be conducive for me to leave the house, I had to make more than $40,000. Once we paid for the second car, well, we had the second car, but the wear and tear, because when I was a domestic, I was just driving like 2 miles from the house, grocery store, dry cleaners, whatever. But if I'm suddenly going to be driving to work and back, there's childcare. It until I passed 40,000, it literally just netted out. There was no profit. So I guess that's where it's difficult for me to understand how that ends up working out, unless she's making 6 figures. And then again, it's like, what does your child lose when they're with, like, now you're not giving that kid input? I'm trying to, this is not from a place of judgment. This is from just actual
I get it.
Conversation. Like, what are we
compromising
is what I'm saying.
I think that's as unique as individuals are, meaning, do you live in a city where you have family support? Do you have siblings there? Do you have a mom that loves the grandkids and, can help out with that? I think that's a very individual thing. But in the scenario that you gave, where it was like, okay, well, I have to make a certain amount for this to make financial sense. From Terry's perspective, even if there was a $7,000 net loss, if it made Yancy happier, if Yancy felt better about her contribution to the world, if she's sustaining her own identity in the community, I'll say, let's take that $7,000 loss. That's where I am. Now, if she's just working a job that's not at all connected to her identity, that's a totally different thing. But I think what we do for a living is such a big part of who we are. It's the creative outlet. It's where we forge meaningful relationships. It's where we use our God-given talents. It's how we make an impact on the world. For those of us that have a spiritual foundation, it's probably where we interface with people that we can bring into the fold spiritually, because you get to know these people so well. So I don't personally want whoever I end up marrying and anyone that I've been in a relationship with previously, I don't want a woman to think that she has to give that up any more than I would be willing to give that up. But I'm not giving it.
Yeah.
And I listened to this therapist who has counseled couples throughout the entire world. She's really, really famous. And she says that in our lifetime, we have 3 serious relationships. Typically, that's the average. And she's been married for 36 years to the same person 3 times. And I think that where couples lose, like he's saying, I totally am 1000% in agreement, is that we lose our identity and we identify ourselves to our children as mothers. We identify ourselves through our marriages, but we don't identify with who we are as a person individually first. And I will wake up at 5:30 in the morning just to have 3 hours to myself before it's like chaos in my house, right? Like my son, I got to walk the dog. Just so I can have a peace of mind, I can do what I need to do to make Maya happy, right? And like my career is a huge part of who I am, in that if I'm not, and I've built my career over 20 years, it's such a big piece of who I am. If I am not fulfilled with myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to pour from an empty cup, right? Like if I am like constantly giving to everybody else but to me. So I think that like that's where women, we're such loving and nurturing people by nature that we feel like we put everybody else before us and we put ourselves on the back burner, and then we're the ones paying the cost and we become resentful.
But Maya, can I ask this if I can jump in? If it's about, because I totally agree on like stimulating your mind, but what I saw happening back in the day was people were involved with the church. That's how they got their, just one example. That's how people got socializing. They volunteered at local charities. They were like, my mom was heavily involved in the PTA. She was the booster mom. Like all the other kids' moms were working. My mom was the one with the station wagon, like getting pizza for kids and having a place to come stay. I struggle with this, what feel like the suggestion that if you are not earning a check, you are not like you're not mentally stimulating or you're foregoing. I feel like there are some people who are wired where they can get that nourishment out of life. Like for me, for example, I found out the kind of stuff that was being taught to my daughter in school, I was not having it. So I had to figure out what can I do where I can physically stay at home and still take care of her. I'm in a different situation because it's just me. But I had to figure something out. And so I started to explore something online that allowed me to be here physically with my daughter and have a flexible schedule. I feel like something always loses. And I think that all the suggestions that we're hearing, the kids keep losing. And that's the part that's the struggle for me. And again, this is not in a condemnation, but these are the tough things that we have to talk about. I look at my friends who, you know, their parents weren't there. And so they were sneaking and doing things that they weren't supposed to because, you know, as teenagers, they had a whole house themselves or things like that. As a woman, my understanding is that we are nurturers. We take care of our family. That's the first and foremost. And I feel like when the kids get older, yeah, we have a little bit more free time to do those fulfilling things. But I struggle with the identity being found in the career. Michael had his hands up, so I want to get to you before I forget.
Yeah. If in remembering my story, again, my ex-wife and myself had our children while we were in college. Even after having our second child, it was a decision that was made, supportive equally, that my ex-wife, you know, would stay home with her earned bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary education for early childhood to sit at home and raise our children to be the first level of education for them. Mind you, I'm still in school working on my bachelor's degree in music education, working with work study, $5 an hour. But our commitment to, again, go to college and get those degrees meant that no matter what obstacles we had, and we are both Christian, that we were going to do what needed to be done, even if it was picking up a side job, which is what I did, to survive. The thought, again, of having a family or having a relationship that's based upon this business arrangement or this bag, it just astounds me that, again, what you're saying, Yancy, is the foundational pieces that are being taken away from what our families need or our children need at a point of, if there is somebody that may not have in the relationship, then what happens in that relationship? Or do we cut someone off? Do we toss them out with the bathwater? Of course, because our relationship, started the way it did, again, with neither one of us having, a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Once we actually did establish our finances, there was a joint account. There was joint everything. Till we got to a point where we then set up an account where I had an account for my little bit of, if I wanted to eat out at work or do something for myself. And my ex-wife had the same thing set up for herself. Again, 21 years married. One day she woke up differently. There was no abuse. There was no infidelity. There was nothing that happened in the marriage. She just woke up differently. But I will say that with the introduction of social media and a lot of these things out here that people are selling as the bigger, better deal and the grass being greener, I'll just leave it right there.
But do you think that if she came on, she would say she was super happy and then just woke up one day and said, I want to leave a 21-year marriage?
I think what you said about one of the reasons why marriages are not together anymore or why relationships struggle is because people basically just run a little thin, or they're what exactly did you say earlier? Because I don't want to misquote.
I think that people feel like their love tank isn't full, like they're not getting what they need from their partner, but two,
that's exactly right.
When the going gets tough, they get going because the alternative is to have to work on themselves. So if your partner is saying, I'm not happy.
Right. That's exactly what I would say, because again, the friendship or the connection that is now trying to be extended or re-extended basically speaks to that fact that maybe you could have tried or done something differently before making a permanent decision off of temporary feelings. I'll leave it right there.
But do you think that it was a light switch? Do you think that it was literally like bliss? I'm super happy, and then today I'm not happy.
I think 10 counselors called it a midlife crisis, but you have to own it.
Okay, I'm gonna take your word for it. As someone who talks to couples, it's you. I have never seen a situation where one partner accurately could express what the other partner is feeling. So that's why they always say there's three sides. There's his side, her side.
Right. And you're correct. There's always three sides of the story: his, hers, and the median truth. And the last thing that I will ever do is get into a public forum and talk down on or bring someone else's character down because they're not there to defend themselves. But what I will say is, on the sense of, again, because this conversation or this topic has been about what provisions can happen or what happens financially when there's one partner that says, can they possibly be carried or anything will be done? Again, because we started off our marriage and our relationship with nothing and took everything to a point of complete jointness until we went our separate ways through a divorce, even because I'm a person who, again, that believes in protecting, providing, and the whole nine, when the divorce took place and we went our separate ways, I still wanted to provide. Not because I was told legally to. I still wanted to provide. even though she has her own to do her own. I come from a different class of men. I come from a different culture of men. So having someone to basically sit up here now and continue to talk about budgetary, financial blueprint, what the schematics say, what the algorithms say, and the whole nine, to not have someone in my life through matrimony or marriage anymore, and I'm still saying I wanted to take care of where you didn't want to be by choice, it's a totally different class of man. So it's a cop-out for me for any man to say that if his wife asks, could you take care of me while I help to take care of the kids or anything of that nature, is your wife your love or is your wife a business deal? I don't play those games.
I also think, too, that in America, we live far above our means. I think that in America, we spend on entertainment, eating out, and all that stuff. What if we really cut corners, you know, or we started having multiple families living at home? I feel like there are ways, but I think that we live according to what our priority is. I think that we really can look at what we prioritize when we look at our spending. Because there are people who say they want to be at home with their kids. I'm just using that one example. Or they want to do X, Y, Z, but are spending whatever on handbags or yada, yada, yada. Ida, you had your hand up, and then we're going to be close. I always say I'm going to end in an hour, and then end up being all interested in what's being said. So we'll do a few more comments, and then we will wrap here, you guys.
I was just going to respond to what Maya and you, Yancy, were saying, that to always protect your peace at all costs. She was saying that she would get up early in the morning to make sure that, you know, she has that time by herself. I've learned that I will protect my peace at all costs. And if that means that I have to get up early to do so, I will. Also, when it came down to making sure that my children were at a place of peace, I had to pull my number 4 out of school in 7th grade to homeschool him because his personality was shifting. He got really mean. He got really distant. He got very emotional, and the school system was kind of picking on him, if you will. And I'm not trying to pick on them, but they were picking on him. So I had to remove him from the school system. And at this point, my job kind of retired me because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and so I was at home. And so I had to remove him from the school system, and I homeschooled him for an entire year. This was right before the pandemic. And so I made sure that I told him, I was like, now, do you want to do this? You know, because I'm going to be harder on you at home than you were at school. You're going to be up. You know, I had to kind of, what do they say? You're going to have to make him unlearn the school, the way the school teaches him, to teach him, reteach him. And so I had to do that. And like he got up at 10, we went to the gym for gym, things like that. But by the time he went back to school, my son was getting a 3.0 GPA. And this is during the pandemic because he was already doing everything online. Right. And so with that, he soared, you know, during that time. But I said that to say, sometimes you will have to, it's not about the money, it's about where your priority is. And my child was my priority. So it didn't matter whether I was bringing in an income, it was about, that's not my baby. That's not the child that I sent to school a year and a half ago. Yeah. Something has shifted, and I need to make sure that his peace is protected as well. Because yes, at home, we're supposed to teach him, but when we send him there too, you also want his peace protected, and it wasn't being protected. Look. And I needed to bring him out of that situation to let him know, I love you, and we're going to get this thing right. And so when I sent him back in, even the teachers were like, something is different about this kid. You know what I mean? Yes. So I think it's more so of where your priority is in your family and whether or not you can see that difference and make that what's the choice to do so. That makes sense.
And I can relate to the pulling the kid out. I pulled my son out of 4th grade for a year because the teachers were like, he's just talking. And when I really researched, because, you know, no one's going to fight for your kid the way you fight for your kid as a mama. And so when I pulled him out, I realized what it was is he's so stinking brilliant, he was bored. And I thought about any class I ever sat through, any lecture I've ever, you know, business meeting. If I'm not stimulated, I'm like, and it's not like you can get on your phone. So he was so bored. So I started challenging him and, you know, he excelled. And now he's like higher than a 4.0, going to be going off to college. He just won an award today. Like, what did he say? Icon of the senior class. Like, he's like the male icon. Like, just could not be prouder. But they were ready to medicate him and put him somewhere. And it was like, no, he's just not stimulated in your class. Shantae, you had something you wanted to share? I see the hand.
That's why I'm just going to say that in a lot of ways, this pandemic was a blessing and a curse. You know, for me, I can only obviously speak for me. It really had me pay attention to a lot of things that I did not pay attention to before. Like when it came to the schooling, when it came to my own personal health, when it came to my mental health. Like what Ida said, protecting your peace at all costs, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I was not taking the best care of my health, you know, like physically, eating properly, things like that. And then, of course, obviously the third thing, and not in this order, but when my children had went back to school, you know, both my children, I had a discussion with them at 13 and 8, and I let them make their own decisions. Like, hey, look, you know, when I was working at home at the time, it was actually way more hectic, I would say, you know, for me to try to focus on my job, working from home, and trying to get my children to both focus and pay attention while they're at home, chilling in their pajamas, you know, eating as they're supposed to be paying attention to the instructor just because, you know, they're at home. Right. So I said, okay, this is a lot. And I said, you know what? The first thing I said, teachers do not make enough. That's my opinion. They do not make enough. Schools do not pay them enough. Like, this is very challenging. But also, you know, when I got to the point where I also wanted my children to have those friends, I wanted my children to have, not be so sheltered to the point where now they're scared to go outside and
not socialized.
The news is kind of scaring them into like just being secluded and hermit crabs and stuff. So when I decided to put them back in school, I always made it clear to them. I said, listen, anytime you're unhappy about something, and not just any little thing, I mean, if it's a big thing, if it's a teacher that's maybe brushing you off because you're asking for help now because she has other kids that she has to attend to, or you know what, you're important as well.
Right.
So anytime you have an issue in your schoolwork where you're just not getting it, the teacher maybe isn't being that helpful, then you need to let me know so that I can go ahead and maybe do more, you know?
Yeah.
But also, like, you know, Maya was saying, you know, it was also very important for me to have an identity outside of work and have an identity outside of my children. So that me getting to what mattered to me was when I wasn't working for that certain amount of time and the kids were in school. Oh, that was my time to work out. That was my time to clean the home. That was my time to do whatever I needed to do to make me happy.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's when the pandemic was a blessing and a curse for me anyways.
My dad made a really good point, years ago. And he said, this is the first generation that really has to do things on their own. Someone mentioned like having a family support system, and because we become so technologically advanced, you know, people get jobs and move to other states or go to school and then just start building a life there. But back in the day, everyone lived, like if you were from Little Rock, everyone stayed in Little Rock, and then you had aunties and grandmas and everything. So I feel like this is such a complicated thing. And me advocating for mamas in the home, please, again, do not take it as though I'm condemning anyone else. I think it's a complete privilege that I was able to do it. I do not take it lightly whatsoever. But I also want to acknowledge that there are so many consequences for what has happened to us collectively. So moving away from the home, that means you're moving away from your support system. Moving away from the home means financially you're not sharing costs. Family dinners are a lot easier than everyone buying individual things. I also think that there has become this obsession with keeping up with the Joneses and having the best thing. And every time my car gets 3 years old, I gotta get a new car. We don't really understand what it means to live below our means. So most people, like in America, we're living the good life compared to other countries. But according to us, well, I don't have the newest iPhone. So I think this is just a lot of stuff. I want to cause people to just really evaluate and look at things and see what it is that you want, because we can all say, ideally, I want everything. But the reality is, when you multitask, something gets lost. And so I know for me, I never had a career. I always wanted to be a mom, a wife. So the second I got my degree, I was like, give me my MRS. Like, I was ready. And so first job I went to, met a guy, boom, we got engaged 3 months later. Like, I was so ready for it. If I was focusing on a career, which I would call this a career, I recognize that in order to be really successful, you have to be really dedicated. You have to put in time. You have to put in energy. And my daughter does, she does have to sacrifice a little bit. She does. Like, 2 o'clock, she's done with school. Well, now it's a lot earlier because she does online school, but I'm not there. I'm physically here, but I don't get to like clock out until 5. I'm having to always consider, okay, what do I have to do? Do I have to do client? Whatever, whoop-de-whoop. There are consequences for the choices that we make. And I think that they need to be considered. And what I see with women especially, I don't see it with men so much, but I see women looking at what they wish it could be and not truly counting the cost. Everything has a cost. Every decision that you make, good or bad, there's going to be a cost. Even if it's going to the gym and working out, you're costing your time. Now, does it benefit something? Yes, but you have to count the cost. And I think that's where a lot of times we as women, we become, not really aware of the consequences, because if you focus on a career, you don't really pay attention to what men want. Now you look up, you're single in your 30s, 40s, you're competing with 20-year-olds that subconsciously a man is going to want more because biologically they're more fertile. That just is what it is. And then the woman would say, well, the men should want this and the men should want. You can't tell someone else what they want. You just can study what they go after and become that. That's sales 101. I can't make the customer want my stuff. I just have to keep improving my product. So I hope you guys had a lot of things to listen to and take in and give some food for thought. I appreciate all the conversations. I actually thought there'd be way more debates because I was ready for an angry mob to come fight me, but y'all were just really nice and sweet. And so that, not complaining. But yeah, this was a very interesting discussion, and I'm going to have a more formal presentation next week so that I can kind of deliver the stuff that I had prepared for today. It just went a little bit differently because I had anticipated the career woman coming on, the career women who weren't in relationships. So did anyone want to make any closing statements before we go? And poor Julian, we didn't acknowledge you because we've been chatting and whatnot, but hello. You're welcome to join in with closing thoughts. But I would say go in order, but I think it looks different. Yeah, the different screens are different. So we'll go, just if you can remember who's in front of you. So we'll go Shantae first, then we'll go Mike, then we'll go Michael, then we'll go Julian, and anyone can pass if they want to. And then Maya and Ida, Terry, and does anyone have their camera off so I don't see them? No, I think that's everyone. And you guys, we can wrap after the closing thoughts.
My only closing thought would just be that having a conversation is everything. Communication is everything. Whether it's stay-at-home mom, whether we're going to work, whether we're going to have separate accounts, joint accounts, all of that, everything that we discussed tonight, I feel like a lot can be resolved through talking through. You know what I'm saying? Like, if a man wants to be the man and just be completely masculine and take care of everything, which is absolutely great, that's wonderful, then I feel like, the conversation needs to be had about, what the woman's contribution will be. But definitely everything starts with conversation. And also with dating, y'all need to vet properly. Vet. That's the word, B-E-T, vet.
Till death do us part. That's a long partnership to not be vetting people. Sorry.
You got to vet. You have to, just the same way that you would inspect the food that you're about to put into your mouth, you need to go ahead and inspect everyone that, the people that you're interested in dating. And dating is supposed to be fun. It really is. It's supposed to be fun. So, the vetting process is very important with who you choose to be with. And then definitely communication is everything.
Excellent points. Mike is next, Mr. Perez.
Well, I enjoyed the conversation. We were all over and very deep. And
I was trying to pivot. I was like, this is not what I planned.
I had thought of all these answers for our questions for today.
Me too.
Yes.
Sorry to laugh.
Did you say you're going to add a part 5 to this series? Is that
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a part 5 adjustment because I had a special guest coming on next week. But yeah, I had all my questions prepared, but it kind of doesn't make sense to ask people in relationships and men. So they're all geared towards women.
I'll just close out by saying fear is a shackle and faith is empowering. So
you said an arrow?
Faith is empowering.
Oh, empowering. Sorry, I don't know. I heard arrow. Okay.
That's good too. Yeah, it's straight up in the air. But yes, a lot of times when we are dating or in marriage, we are making decisions, whether they're financial decisions or they're commitment decisions based out of fear. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to be self-aware. Somebody talked about self-awareness. But what comes after self-awareness is self-regulation. What do you do with that emotion that comes up inside of you? And if you react on it, you're probably going to make a wrong choice. If you respond to it, then you're thinking with your head, and not out of fear. So always ask yourself that question: Am I making this decision about my relationship out of fear or faith?
I like that. And just to give an example, a lot of times somebody can feel like I've gone too long, I've waited too long, let me just get with this person, or I hate working. Maybe a woman who wants to stay home, so let me just do this. But any reason other than this is what I think is the best decision, and if you're a believer, this is who I see God, telling me to marry, it ain't worth it. Because when that glitter comes off, whoo, child. Michael, feel free to share any closing thoughts if you have any.
Yes. First, I would say, because I did mention my ex, even not in name, but I just referenced my ex in this conversation, I want to extend to her peace, because we are friends. We started as friends, and we are still friends. So anything that I said in reference, even though anything of our personal nature may not have been shared, I extended in love and peace, to hopefully, again, to have educated or just shared within this conversation for people. That's what men do. From the first week that I came on, I referenced the same aura that I presented, that love and relationship is a choice. Two individually minded people coming together and deciding to compromise in all aspects of life. Not to change each other, but to be the greatest complement with God as the center. And then you do whatever it is you can to not lose your individuality, but to be the best of each other and holding each other up and just doing what makes you happy, making yourself happy and knowing that joy comes from internal. But that person that you choose to have in your life, that you vet, Miss Shantae, is the greatest compliment that you bring into your life. And with that, peace and good night to all.
Well, thank you so much. Julian, would you like to add anything to the conversation? You're going to go ahead and tap your... Oh, perfect.
Nothing in particular, but I do thank everyone for sharing their respective perspectives. More insight now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Miss Maya.
Okay, I have two things to say. The first one is to Ida, because she's new in the dating world. dating is a numbers game. You know, we as women put all our eggs in one basket and we just pray and hope that he's the one, when to me, dating is a numbers game. It's you set up, you go on a date, you just meet for coffee, and you'll know instantly whether there's a connection, right? And to not veer away from what are deal breakers for you. For me, you know, in my 40s, dating men in my 30s, they wanted children. I knew I didn't want any children. So it was like, I wasn't going to waste my time. Like, go have a child with somebody who can give you a child. I can't give you a child. I don't want children. Or smokers. I was never going to date a smoker. I don't care how good you look, how much money you have. If you smoke cigarettes, it was a turnoff. So know what your deal breakers are and stick with it and take your time and have fun with it. And then another thing I want to leave everybody with is that when you really want to make something work in a partnership, with a relationship, you make it work. You put in the effort, the time, the energy. You try to understand your partner. It's not about yourself. It's not, you're in a relationship because you're there to fulfill, you know, something in love for both of you. And it's not going to be easy. It's a lot of, you know, it's work. But, you know, rather you want to pick your battles and you want to make sure you're true to yourself, but you just don't want to be miserable. And if you find yourself miserable, it might be time to part ways.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, Miss Ida.
Thank you, Miss Maya. I really appreciated the conversation tonight. Yeah, I'm not ready. To date, I still have to love on me a lot more. I will say, like Shantae said, that communication is key. I think clarity is key, and comprehension is definitely key. I think that I don't know what I think. And I'm delirious because I haven't been to sleep. But this conversation was great. I think that we all need to work together and love on ourselves, and that's where the joy comes from. And Mike, may I say that every time that you talk, I am holding on to every word, and then you just kind of end, and I'm like, oh, where's the rest of it? Well, you guys, it was
always leave a little to be desired.
He's very good at that.
Thank you, guys.
I love that. So I have my screen set to where I can only see people whose cameras are on, so I'm glad you turned yours on so I remember Terry. Would you like to close out with any words?
I think most everything's been said. So I echo most of the sentiments that's been shared. I want to continue to encourage you to, you know, keep creating this platform. I think that a couple people said it earlier that these conversations are playing out all over social media, but there's so much toxicity around it. And there's such a us against them dynamic,
right, that
neither side is really hearing one another. And at the end of the day, you know, our communities have a lot of issues, and the foundational piece of solving most of those issues is going to be the family structure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if this conversation helps a couple or helps individuals to better understand how to go about being part of, like, aggressive side of that, then I'm all for it. I think at the end of the day, it's about having traditional values, but in a contemporary environment, and redefining what that looks like in practice. I think if we're trying to hold on the way that we used to do it in a different political, social, economic climate, that's not going to work. But if we throw away everything that our grandparents and our parents did, we're not going to get good outcomes from that either.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we have to just really redefine what that means in this particular era.
I appreciate that so much. You guys, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it a lot. The conversations, I always learn so much from everybody. I'm going to do a closing statement. You guys are welcome to watch from YouTube, but I'm going to do my final little closing, and then I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. All right, guys on YouTube, stick around. I want to speak to you from my heart because there was a little bit of a different plan. Like I said, I wanted to talk to women who were having difficulty finding love and finding, you know, peace in just having their career and you know, not having love. But we made a little bit of a pivot today. But I want to talk with you guys about something that I have discovered and I have put a course together on, and it is dealing with divine energy. And I want to talk to you guys just briefly to kind of give you a little bit of a taste. And hold on just one second, you guys. I'm telling you, I gotta get my crew together. All right, so I can do this stuff easily. Hang on. And oh, I meant to say this too. Greg, thank you so much for the I forget what they're called, super chats. Super chats are on YouTube. Thank you. It really does help a lot. One of the things that really is a struggle for me to see is when a lot of relationships come to an end unnecessarily, and I am speaking from personal experience. I didn't have to walk away from my relationship, and a lot of times I feel that we as humans, it's easier to walk away from the person instead of dealing with what's going on. And with the exception, obviously, of domestic violence and things like that, I think that it's actually an opportunity to learn about ourselves. I think that the people who know us the most, there's a saying, familiarity brings contempt. And I believe that's because after a while, you start to see the real them. We might have pleasantries and things like that, but the ones who are closest to us, they see us on a day-to-day basis. And as much as we all try to be the best we can be, we have times where we can get a little grouchy. We have times that we can be, a little short-tempered. There are times we can be judgmental. Even the people who try to hold themselves to the highest level. And so, thank you, Ida. Thank you. And so it's difficult when it all hangs out and somebody sees you. And so the challenge is to be loving to that person, even though they're not perfect, because we want that same love and grace in return. We want that person to be sacrificial and give us the benefit of the doubt and things like that. But we also can challenge each other to grow. So I would say, especially if you have a good relationship with the people from your past. Fortunately, I actually talked to an ex today. He came to mind and we had the most beautiful conversation. I'm fortunate to say that I think everyone I've dated, have a good relationship with, and we ended as friends. But those people can teach you so much about yourself. And I actually had to go back to him because he was on my mind, and I realized, man, I actually couldn't really appreciate him that much at that time because I didn't understand what I know now. And a lot of times people are in your life, I believe, to bring out the best in you, even if it's to build up your patience, even if it's to help you with stamina. For me, I learned to have to be more, disciplined. Because when I was living on my own, I could make excuses. I could act like it doesn't matter. But it's really important. And so the reason why I want to talk about divine energy is because there is a point in which you tap out. There is a point in which you're like, enough is enough. And when I have clients, they'll tell me things that the person did that if they went to a court of law, if there was such a thing as a relationship court of law, they'd be like, you're guilty and you're innocent. There are times where we have to be sacrificial, and that's when God's love comes in. And so this isn't something where you just like hold your breath and channel it and try to keep it in. There's an actual transformation that can happen that turns you into a different person, a person who is more peaceful, more patient, more kind. Because the alternative is on your own, in your own power, trying to hold everything in. And you're like a little teacup or it's a teapot that's just going to at one point. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but you know what I'm saying. You can only hold in so much. And then it all comes out. There's a question, divine energy, is this supported by God's word? It is not only supported by God's word. It is founded 100% in God's word. It actually was inspired and extracted from God's word. He says it's not by might, but by power. And not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. So that divine energy, the spirit of God, it is the thing that will keep relationships not only together, but thriving and enjoyable. You're supposed to be enjoying the wife of your youth. You're supposed to be loving your husband. And it should not be this grit your teeth and bear it. And I could say, even right now, just even through the separation, the relationship that I have with my estranged husband, it is incredible. It's the best that we have had. And so I just want to encourage all of you to stick around, because little by little, I'm going to be sharing more and more about that formally. I have found that it is such a profound thing that sometimes I struggle to really, really articulate it to where it really makes sense. It would almost be like someone trying to explain a Tesla before there's a Tesla, or trying to explain, an iPhone before there's an iPhone. It's difficult, but I do have a webinar that I'm putting together, and it's going to be a lot more formal, and I will break it down. But there is a consistency where I see with couples where they are falling off. The men are feeling they're not understood, and the women are feeling they're not loved. And there's a way that we can learn to speak with God's love to where it transcends all of that. So just stick around, be patient with me, guys. Like I said, I'm always learning how to tweak my delivery. I'm always learning how to try to share. And I just want to quickly get to the comments, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, thank you, Link. I appreciate that. I'm not sure which video you're speaking of specifically, but thank you. Let's see. And we got Oakland, California. And thank you guys also for being so gracious. You know, as Mike was stated, he always prepares for the questions that are being asked. I had 3 pages of typed notes that I was going to be going over. And so we didn't have all these career women who said they were coming. I was like, pivot. So thank you for you guys on the panel's patience, and the patience for those who were in the comments. I also feel like I'm a little delirious, like Ida was saying, because I got up at 3 this morning and I'm like running on fumes. So if I seem a little extra dingy today, that would be why. All right, guys, until next time, please be sure to tell somebody that you love them. And I hope it's really clear how much I love you. I'm going to stick around for about 2 minutes and look at the comments. Good night, guys.